Welcome everyone to Have History Will Travel. I am your host, the Wilder Historian, and a few weeks ago I asked the YouTube community to put forward names of Civil War generals and I would rate their beards or facial hair. Because the list is enormous, I am hesitant to rank them, but instead give them a grade like in school. However, I will be choosing an ultimate winner and runners-up. Although I think it goes without saying, I made this simply to be a light-hearted video, so don't take it too seriously. I will be grading them on a few criteria: fullness, presentation, and kempness. That being said, I'm excited to dive into the world of facial hair and grade these mammoths of the beard world. Remembered as being the Union commander at the Battle of Franklin and nearly destroying Hood's Army of Tennessee, Schofield's beard is an unmanicured growth. I've had a beard similar to his style and texture and can say from personal experience, little was done to the beard. It's a natural growth, and his weak mustache forces me to give him a D+. It's an effort, but a weak one if you want to look good. John C. Robertson, widely regarded as the hairiest man in the Army, he performed well in battlefields in the Eastern Theater. I really like his mustache curled back into the beard and the flow of the main beard. It's well-groomed and impressive. I'm going to give him an A. You don't get a nickname the hairiest man in the Army without having an impressive beard. Lafayette Mclaughs. One of Longstreet's division commanders, Mclaughs' troops occupied part of the Stonewall at Fredericksburg and was heavily involved in the brutal fights on the second day at Gettysburg. He fell out of favor with the Corps commander after their time in East Tennessee. I think the best way to describe him and other commanders on this list is burly. He has a full burly beard. You can tell from the picture that he does maintenance, but it's not a great priority, so I will give him a C+, but I could also see it as a B- as he has great growth. John Bell Hood. Let's stay in Longstreet's Corps for a moment and look at the facial hair of Hood. The excellent division and brigade commander has a lot of photos, and each one it appears he has a different style of beard. I've seen the one where the beard is basic and a little frazzled, but then we have the more elegant beard picture. I'm going to give him an A based on the fullness, and I have always admired his mustache. It has an excellent form and thickness that matches the beard. David M. Gregg. A less talked about but very influential cavalry commander, Gregg graduated from West Point and fought Native Americans in the late 1850s before the war broke out. He commanded cavalry in the Army of the Potomac and was involved in throwing back his classmate and enemy cavalier Jeb Stuart at the Battle of Gettysburg. Gregg's massive beard is incredibly impressive, and when you look at the sideburn part of the beard, you can see that he attempted to layer it, which signifies his attempt to manicure the large beard. I'm giving Gregg a B+. Wade Hampton, a cavalier under Jeb Stuart and a hard fighter in his own right, Hampton took over command of the Confederate cavalry once Stuart was killed. I think Hampton embodies the 19th century beard. Every inch of it is put into perfect place. The mustache pairs well with the beard, and the fluffiness of the beard is incredible. I'm going to give him an A. You just can't get much better than Wade Hampton's facial hair. Francis Channing Barlow. One of Winfield Scott's favorite division commanders, Barlow controlled his brigades well and was a tenacious fighter, being horribly injured at Gettysburg. However, while grading beards, I have to give him an F, frankly because he has no facial hair. One of the most well-known clean-shaven commanders of the war, he will forever be remembered as one of the best in the Second Corps. Ulysses S. Grant. His military record was incredible, with his capture of Vicksburg, the breaking up of Confederate forces around Chattanooga, and him accepting the surrender of Robert E. Lee and his army. Although this army commander had a very impressive beard at the beginning of the war, he cut it down significantly, so I will grade the most recognizable beard that he had. I'll give him a solid B. It's not extravagant, but it is well maintained and always seemed to be in place during pictures. Robert E. Lee. While we are on the topic of army commanders, let's look at the leader of the Army of Northern Virginia. Lee was notorious to trim his beard every day so that it always looked the same no matter when you saw him. I'm grading his beard the same as Grant's, a B. It's not spectacular like some of the other men on this list, but is well groomed and has excellent fullness. John Gibbon. Until the siege of Petersburg and Richmond, John Gibbon was lauded for the most part by his Corps commander Winfield Scott Hancock. The division and Corps commander is most known for his mustache, but we do have this picture of him with a full beard. Although the picture isn't the best, the shape looks to be immaculate and the fullness looks great, so I'm going to give him a B+ based on the shape and size. George Meade. The commander of the Army of the Potomac from 1863 until the end of the war, Meade proved himself to be an able commander. even when he was overshadowed by Ulysses S. Grant. His beard, however, was a little scruffy. It looks like it's full, but the overall presentation looks a little ratty, like he has woke up and not combed it. Gotta give him a B- for his beard, but I am still a fan of this wonderful Union commander. Alpheus Williams. He fought in both theaters of the war as a division commander and performed well, but more impressive than his military career was his facial hair. His style was unique in that it was more than just a common beard. His extended mustache that morphed into the beard made for a striking figure. The tuft of hair on his chin looks a little more disheveled than the mustache, which is in perfect order. I'm going to give him a B+. Albert Jenkins. His cavalry was the eyes and ears of Robert E. Lee's army as it marched into Pennsylvania. He would be wounded at the Battle of Cloyd's Mountain and have an arm amputated but die 12 days later. When it comes to his facial hair, I put him in the same category as Schofield as being more natural growth with not much done to it. However, you can see some trimming present. He receives a B for a combination of its thickness and length, but I don't see anything special, which is the reason for the low grade. Joseph Mower, spending the beginning stages of the war in the Trans-Mississippi Department and the Western Theater the rest of the time, he gets little attention from Civil War enthusiasts, but we will give him ample attention here for his facial hair. As you can see, he has taken the time to trim and cut it to make it look excellent. Along with the chin, his mustache is well prepared and groomed. It looks like it has been freshly cut, so it hasn't had time to form into a stable shape. I've noticed with my own beard, although looking good right after a trim, I find it looks better with a week or two of growth after the trim. He gets an A- for the excellent display of facial hair. David Dixon Porter. He took part in the Vicksburg campaign, the Red River campaign, and the attacks on Fort Fisher. Although he was an admiral and not a general, I will still include him on this list. Again, his beard seems like just a natural growth without much care placed on its presentation. I'm going to give him a solid C, because it is an impressive growth, but not clearly as impressive as many of the men on this list. James Longstreet. I think at this point Longstreet's beard has become iconic. Not as primped as other commanders' facial hair, but still impressive to look at. The Corps Commander of the Army of Northern Virginia gets a B from me. It's impressive, but when we compare it to men like Hood's, it falls short. Thomas Stonewall Jackson. Another iconic beard of the Civil War, Jackson's facial hair when looked at with a critical eye is lacking. You can see his hair at the sideburns are a little scant, and the general's beard seems as though it hasn't got much attention from the Corps Commander. The ends of the hairs are moving in all kinds of directions, and it's generally unkempt. I know many people may disagree with me, but when put to the standard in this video, I give him a C+. Joseph Wheeler. Of the cavalry commanders in the West, Wheeler runs behind Forrest and John Hunt Morgan, but he was an excellent commander of cavalry. When it comes to beards, I always admired his thickness and the natural way it flowed. It's not large, but is very well kept, but gave him more of a sorrowful face. I will give him a B because of just how well it was maintained and its thickness that he primped. James Patton Anderson. Rising to the rank of Major General, Anderson participated in some of the biggest battles of the Western Theater. However, his pitiful facial hair should have knocked him down to a private. The jowl portion of the hair is springy and unkempt and dips down into his neck. The mustache seems out of place. The whole scheme is weirdly set. I have to give him an F for the horrible presentation and unmanicured way he kept his facial hair. Speed Fry. Although he ran into trouble near the end of his Civil War career, his beard did not get into trouble. I've always been a fan of Fry's facial hair. Not overly large, but was well trimmed and thick. Nothing special, but nothing egregious. So I have to give him a solid B. The slayer of Felix Zollicoffer and the winner at the Battle of Mill Springs performed well on this grading scale. Samuel Woodson Price. He fought in many of the battles in the Western Theater and was ultimately wounded at Kennesaw Mountain. He had spent the pre-war years traveling around Kentucky and Tennessee painting portraits, but would be labeled as a tough fighter once he entered the conflict. Similar to Fry's beard, Price's is very elegant, and I love the way the mustache flows into the beard nicely. Also, the fullness of the beard makes it stand out without being very long. I have to give him a B+ for having one of the best kept beards of any commander. William Mahone. Although he fought with the Army of Northern Virginia through its earlier campaigns, he would gain more acknowledgement in the last stages of the war. The Virginian complimented his small frame with a robust beard. However, upon close examination, one can see that his beard is not as thick as many others on this list, but it does have a nice length to it. I have to give Mahone a B- for the lack of fullness, but it's still a quality beard. Albert Lindley Lee, a staple in the Western theater, Lee was involved in some of the biggest campaigns in that theater and wounded at Vicksburg. He has one of the more irregular pattern beards, where the hair didn't grow in as thick or at all in some places as it does in others. Lee will receive a D. It was a good effort, but just doesn't measure up. William Plummer Benton. Another veteran of the Siege of Vicksburg, Benton stayed in the Western and Trans-Mississippi theaters of operations. He is a great example of a majestic beard with fullness. Although it seems coarse, it looks like that is the natural lay of the hair, which appears he takes care of and makes it more than presentable. Benton gets an A-, just a superb looking beard and one anyone would be proud of. Thomas Kilby Smith. The Western Theater General took part in the Battle of Shiloh, Siege of Corinth, the Vicksburg Campaign, and the Red River Campaign. His beard is presented in its natural form with little care taken to its trimming. I have to assign him a D+. It looks full, but the scraggly state resulted in the low grade. James Kemper. Famous for helping lead and survive in Pickett's charge, Kemper was a politician and a general. He led men in some of the bloodiest fights in the Eastern Theater and was wounded in the famed charge. His beard stands out as the shining example of how well fullness can pair with length when it comes to beards. The size and length of his beard results in me giving him a B-. Although those aspects are impressive, it generally looks unkempt. Not only did he survive Pickett's charge, but he survived my grade scale. Samuel Zook. If you watched my series on Winfield Scott Hancock, you would know that both Hancock and Zook liked to cuss and would banter back and forth on the parade ground, throwing out expletives at one another. However, he may have been good at dishing out insults, but he wasn't so good at growing a beard. This represents just a weak attempt, and you can tell it is patchy. He gets a D. It's not a failing beard, but the lack of fullness and growth makes it a lower grade. Alexander Hayes. The dependable division commander lost his life in the wilderness, but the beard legacy far outlived his own life. I love the way he trimmed his beard and the way the mustache flows with the beard and makes the whole presentation incredible. It's thick and robust, and for that, Hayes gets a B+. He takes care of it, and it's way better than the average beard. John Caldwell. The division commander performed admirably at the Battle of Gettysburg and mimicked the skill and energy of his corps commander Winfield Scott Hancock in high-stress situations. Caldwell's beard is a great example of a manicured beard of the 19th century. It appears to be freshly trimmed in this picture, and the entire presentation gives him an A- on my grade scale. You can tell he put a lot of time and effort into making his beard look good. Charles Graham. This division commander of the Army of the Potomac had started his military career before the war as a sailor. He commanded troops in the 3rd Corps and was captured at Gettysburg in exchange for James Kemper, who is also on this list. Graham's beard receives a B- because although it has excellent growth, it appears that the trimming done to the beard leaves something to be desired. Harry Thompson Hayes. As the commander of some of Robert E. Lee's famous Louisiana troops, Hayes faithfully led his men into battle, being captured but escaping, then being severely wounded at the Battle of Spotsylvania Courthouse. He had an eventful military career and an impressive beard. As seen with many gentlemen in the 19th century, Hayes grew a long beard and accompanied it with an equally impressive mustache that extended away from his face. He obviously took careful consideration when it came to his facial hair, and that lands him an A- on this list for the impressive combo. William R. Brewster. This commander in the 3rd Corps took part in some of the hardest fighting on July 2nd when his men were swept from the Peach Orchard by Lafayette Mclaughs' division. He was often sick and missed out on some of the battles the Army of the Potomac took part in. One thing he did not miss out on was taking care of his beard. I feel that this is what Kemper's beard would have looked like with some TLC. I give Brewster an A for fullness and length, but you can tell from the sides of the beard that he took the time to trim it and make sure he had the best presentation possible. Fitzhugh Lee, the nephew of the famous Confederate Army commander, Fitzhugh Lee had a few different facial hair designs, and you can see his beard grow in length from each picture. Like I did with Hood, I will choose what I believe is the best example of his facial hair. I give this one a B+. He has a great length, and you can tell he cared about how he looked, but for some reason it seems a little off to me. I can't put my finger on it, but that is the reason for the low grade. Ambrose Wright. The hard-fighting Georgian was wounded at both Antietam and at Chancellorsville, and even broke through the Union defenses on Cemetery Ridge at Gettysburg, but the lack of support prevented the Confederacy from capitalizing on the breakthrough. From the picture of him, He looks like an intimidating individual, especially with the coarse and wild facial hair. Even though it has a good shape, the unkemptness puts his beard at a C+ for me. It looks like it has the potential to be a great beard, but it definitely needs some attention. Robert Byington Mitchell. This Union general and future governor of the New Mexico Territory sported a robust beard, but he gets a C for his beard because, as one can see, it's lopsided. It's a very thick beard and the mustache matches it nicely, but my eyes go directly to the one side growing out more than the other. Newton Martin Curtis. This giant of a man stood at 6'7". Abraham Lincoln supposedly commented to him, "Mr. Curtis, how do you know when your feet are cold?" His most notorious action was during the attack on Fort Fisher, when during the second attack on the fortification, it was suggested to him to entrench. The giant grabbed the shovels and threw them over the traverse and yelled, "Dig, Johnnies, I'm coming for you." He was wounded and received the Medal of Honor. Even though he had an amazing story, his beard is another story. I'm not entirely sure if the divide in his beard is natural or intended. From the looks of it, I see it as natural, and in that case, proper trimming can solve that problem. It's impressive, but because of the divide, I see it as unkempt. But I can see the other argument. For that reason, I'm going to give him a B. Like I said, I can see the argument for a better grade, but that is my personal grade for him. George Crook. Probably most famous for getting captured by Confederate guerrillas, Crook has a unique beard to say the least. In a time period with various styles and designs, he definitely stands out. I'm giving him a B+ for creativity and confidence to wear that beard. I know that I would not have the guts to have that kind of facial hair. Thomas William Sweeney. This Irishman immigrated to the United States with his family when he was a boy. During the Civil War, he fought in some of the most famous battles and campaigns of the war in the West, Fort Donelson, Shiloh, and the Atlanta campaign. He even got into a fist fight with his corps commander because the corps commander had broke protocol and personally directed one of Sweeney's brigades. As far as beards go, this is a gorgeous beard. It gets an A for how well he kept his beard looking. The flow and fullness complement his face well. It's just a beautiful beard that anyone would be lucky to have. John W. Geary. He had a unique Civil War career and even was involved in the political struggles of Bleeding Kansas before the war. At Gettysburg, he left the brigade of George S. Greene on Culp's Hill, while he marched the rest of the division to the Union left. However, Geary lost track of the troops he was to follow and ended up marching off the battlefield. He would return to Culp's Hill later that night. He would be sent west where he took part in the battles for Chattanooga and the Atlanta campaign. To complement his military record, Geary dons an impressive beard that receives an A from me. Similar to Sweeney, it's full and trimmed to give a flattering appearance to his face. The mustache seamlessly morphs into the beard, and it's a very beautiful example of facial hair. Now it's time for the second runner-up, George S. Greene. As one of the saviors of Gettysburg, George Greene held on to Culp's Hill during the night of the second day of the battle, and just as or more impressive than his military accomplishments is his beard. Where many failed in the facial hair challenge, Greene excelled. The fullness of the chin matches the fullness of the mustache, and his sideburns morph beautifully into the chin whiskers. I have to give this man an A. It's full and well-groomed, and that's hard to beat. Now for the first runner-up, Ambrose Burnside. I don't believe any commander of the Civil War had a more lasting effect on facial hair than Burnside. The mere fact that we now associate him with a section of the facial hair raises his grade on this list. To keep a well-groomed beard as his, it took time and effort. It gave him a distinguished look and solidified him as one of the best beards in the war. Unfortunately, that ranking does not apply to his military abilities. I give him a solid A+ for his contribution to the beard world. And now for number one beard of the Civil War, Jeb Stuart. The dashing cavalier who rode around the Union Army multiple times possessed the greatest beard of the Civil War. Initially grown to cover up a weak chin, the bold dragoon always wanted to look his best, and when you see pictures of his beard, you can easily see the lengths that Stuart went to make his facial hair as perfect as possible. The beard comes to a point partly because of grooming, but partly because he would grab it and bring it together when he was nervous. The magnificent mustache extends and then blends beautifully into his beard. Needless to say, he receives an A+ for his beard. He gained national fame as a cavalryman and gains fame again as one of the best beard growers in history. Thank you all so much for your suggestions for who to include in this video. I thoroughly enjoyed creating a more light-hearted video rather than the blood and guts that normally get covered on my channel. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you again, and have a great day.
Historian, historian, where do you roam? Historian, historian, far, far from home. Have history will travel reads the card of a man, a professor with knowledge in the heartland. To educate the world is his mission. A professor of fortune is a man called historian. Historian.